you checked any direct yourself for any legislation?
No, ma'am.
Not
No,
yet.
ma'am. I didn't get the chance to visit library.
No, not that one I'm asking. Like soft copy of any direct, have you seen like this?
No, ma'am. I'm not sure.
You have not seen. So you have one question which is nothing but explain different parts of a statute. Okay, you already know what is a statute. It's nothing but a rule book, right? Or legislation, which is in the original form, how it is passed from the parliament or the state legislature, right? So as you know that your syllabus is also having topics like interpretation of statute and all that stuff. So it's very important that we have an idea on what a statute looks like, what are the different things that we get in a statute, right? So this question is nothing but explain the different parts of a statute that gives us a fair understanding on what are the things that we get in a statute, right? So interpretation of statute, it plays a very important role in delivery of justice, which is again the most important function of having laws in a society. There are various internal and external aids which are used by judges in interpretation of statutes. What are aids?
Aids, ma'am. Aids are help. Aids literally means help.
Yes, help. Something you take help of and do certain things, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct. So when we talk about aid, it talks about various internal and external aid. Internal means something which is there already, right? Within something. External as in something which is not part of it, but externally from outside you are taking it, right? So it says there are various internal and external aids which are used by judges to interpret statutes or different rules, regulations, etc. That means when you talk about a direct or legislation or a statute like this, there are certain aids or there are certain helps that judges may take from within the legislation. Okay, if they need to interpret Indian Contract Act, this is nothing but the bare act, right? If they want to interpret any provision, maybe what is communication, what is acceptance, what is revocation, they might take help from something which is given in this statute itself and they can try to derive a meaning. All right. Same ways, sometimes what happens is they need to take help of external aids. This legislation might not be enough. They take help of something else also. Okay, sometimes it happens that because we have thousands of legislations, there is a possibility that two legislations might be related. Like if you take the example of Indian Contract Act, there are many other legislations which are related to Indian Contract Act. So when you read Transfer of Property Act, Specific Relief Act, and so many other legislations, you get reference of Indian Contract Act. As in, to understand Indian Contract Act in a better way, you might need help of Indian Contract Act. To understand Indian Contract Act in a better way, you might need to take help of Indian Majority Act. Okay, one act might not be complete altogether within itself. You might need to take help of some other aids also. Okay, this is nothing but internal and external aids that judges can refer to in interpretation of statute in deriving a meaning out of a certain provision given in the legislation. Okay, is this part clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So when we talk about aids of interpretation, there is another topic entirely on aids of interpretation. So aids and interpretation are what? These are nothing but devices, some like devices which help or assist in the process of interpretation, right? It might happen that something is specifically designed to give some more details so that you can interpret, you can understand a certain provision in a better way. Like examples are what? Nothing but something that explains a situation, right? I might explain you a certain concept, but that might look over complicated. But when I give you an example, you are able to relate and you are able to understand. Same ways, in case of statutes also, we see lot many times examples are given. Okay, if it's a simple legislation, you might not find it, but if it's like a situational legislation where you need to apply to a given situation, there you would most likely see some illustrations. That illustrations will make the thing very clear to you. Okay, so this is nothing but
Okay.
like different aids or thing we have. Okay, internal aid means those materials which are already available in the statute itself. You are not taking help from anything outside. It's there already in the legislation itself. These internal aid include long title, preamble, heading, marginal notes, whatnot. Okay, so these are nothing but again what are the parts of statute. So it's same thing, internal aid of interpretation or parts of statute, it's the same thing. Okay, so we would see what this part is all about.
Okay, ma'am.
Now there are 11 things that I have mentioned here. It might happen that only 5 of these you may get in one legislation, other 4 you may get in another legislation, something you might get in another legislation. Okay, it's not mandatory that all these points would be present in every single legislation, but these are very common things that you get. That's why you would see I have opened 3 legislations: Constitution, Indian Penal Code, and contract. Apart from that, also we can open lot many other legislations. Why? Because one legislation might not have each and everything. Okay, but just for example, I will show you something in those legislations. Otherwise, it's just self-explanatory, the things are, right? So, first of all, it says long title. What is title?
A heading, ma'am.
Heading. Okay. So, title of a statute means?
Basically, what the statute is about. Like, for example, Contract Act is about contract.
Yeah, title is
the
nothing but
heading.
like a title, right? Title of a movie, title of a book, nothing
Yes.
but title as a name of the statute. Right? So when we say long title, every statute starts with a long title. It gives description and objectives also. It mentions the entire thing. Okay, and when we talk about short title, usually short title is used for the purpose of referring or identification of the legislation. Sometimes it might happen that the name of the legislation is like very big. Okay, and you refer it in a short form. There in the statute itself, it might be written because this name of the legislation itself is like 3 sentences. It might not be possible every time you repeat the entire thing. So in the legislation itself, they might say that, okay, this certain thing, it would indicate this legislation itself. Okay, so this is nothing but first thing, title. When you open a legislation, okay, mostly what is common is there would be different sections and stuff, right? So mostly it would start with something called as preamble, which is nothing but like an introductory statement. Why this legislation, some brief summary or something, you would get an idea. Mostly it would start with a preamble. In case of Indian Contract Act also, we have a preamble. In case you open Indian Penal Code, there is a preamble. In case you open Constitution of India, there is like a very elaborate thing given, right? This is also the preamble. Right? So preamble would give us an idea, understanding on what this legislation is all about. After that, you would say short title. Okay, as in this would mention name of the legislation. What is the legislation all about? What is its scope and application, right? Territorial jurisdiction, to what territory it applies, when it would start being applicable, commencement, all these things you would get. This is like a very common thing. Okay, mostly first section would be like title and second section would be like scope of the legislation. Okay, sometimes here and there you might see some exceptions also. That's a different thing. Okay, so first thing you would see all these things: short title, extent, commencement, saving, etc. Okay, is it clear? Is this
Yes,
part
ma'am.
clear? So is this part clear? Short title, extent, saving part.
Yes, ma'am.
What is saving?
Ma'am, it's basically hello.
Okay. Sometimes it might happen that there is one Indian Contract Act. Okay, might be we were already having some customary practices, right? Like in case of some matters, right? Like marriage, divorce, child custody, property, and all that. As I told you, right? It's based on personal laws of the person. As such, we don't have one uniform law that applies. Right? It might happen that based on our customs or something, some laws are already prevailing. then we have some other legislation, then some other legislation. It might happen that one same thing is addressed in many different legislations in many different types of laws. Okay, so saving basically says that we are saving that provision. Okay, it says nothing herein contained shall affect the provisions of any statute, act, or regulation, not hereby expressly repealed, nor any usage or custom or of trade, nor any incident of any contract, not inconsistent with provisions of this act. That means, fine, we are introducing this legislation, Indian Contract Act 1872. This would be applicable. Okay, this will be applicable from 1st of September 1872, fine. But there is a possibility that before this time also there were some laws which were already applicable, some customs, usages, some practices which were already prevailing. If we have not expressly repealed that in this legislation, if specifically we have not mentioned that this certain provision would no more exist, okay, unless and until we have specifically repealed it, that provision would remain as it is, as in saving. We are not touching that provision, that the provision remains as it was applicable unless and until we are specifically repealing it. Okay, this saving clause you would see most of the legislations. Like if you see transfer of property act. Okay, otherwise it talks about gift. How can you gift something to another person? What are the provisions and everything it mentions. At last it mentions this saving provision. For Muslims, they have some like rules and regulations that are applicable to them. So there is a saving provision which says whatever we have written here, it's applicable for other people. But for Muslims, because their personal laws have already well defined this concept of gift, we are not touching it. We are saving that provision. Okay, so saving is as in something which would be untouched, that would remain as it is. Okay.
Okay.
So what do we see? Long title, short title, preamble, heading and title of a chapter. Till preamble we understood. Now heading and title of a chapter. Within one legislation, a lot many things might be provided, right? It needs to be organized in a certain way. How is it organized? For some legislations, you will see it is organized in the form of different chapters. Okay, it would be organized in the form of different chapters. In case you are looking at the preamble, you would say it is organized in different parts. Okay, this whether parts or chapters, these are nothing but specific areas or specific topics that the legislation talks about. Okay, these are like broad topics within a legislation. If you see Indian, this Constitution of India, different parts would be like fundamental rights, right? Directive principles, fundamental duties. Now, fundamental duties and fundamental rights, these are two different topics. So these are covered in one specific part. Okay, as in one specific topic would be segregated in chapters or different parts. Same thing you can see in case of Indian Contract Act also. Right? Contracts, voidable contract, void agreement, and all that you would see communication, you would see performance, like that you will see. In case of Indian Penal Code, again, you would see that different types of crimes are classified in different chapters. Crime against human body, crime against property, crime against governments, all that thing we have seen. So heading and title of a chapter. When we are classifying these chapters, there would be a heading also, which should indicate what this chapter is all about. Offenses relating to weights and measurement, right? Offenses relating to public health, performance of contract. That means when we see this heading, we get to know that, okay, this entire chapter is on performance of contract. What happens if you make a promise and you do not perform it? Right? So this is again something which helps in interpretation, heading and title of a chapter. Then we have definitions. Why are definitions important? Or have you seen any definitions in a legislation?
Definition in the legislation. Ma'am, I have studied about some like sections. They are expressly defined, but I'm not. I know this Black's dictionary which define terms.
Yeah, Black's dictionary you know, like it's a dictionary, it's a law dictionary. But we are talking
Yes,
about
ma'am.
statutes, only legislations.
Oh no, ma'am. Then I have not seen as such definitions.
Okay, fine. Let me ask you one thing. What is the meaning of this word, negotiable?
Negotiable, ma'am. We can basically change the terms, or we can come in between. Supposedly, I want to sell you something and I say a particular price. So you can in turn negotiate with me for a cheaper price. So that's basically that the price is negotiable.
Correct. When we hear this word negotiable, the common understanding that we get is that's something which we can, you know, like bargain. That's something we
Yes.
can say that, okay, do this, do that, kind of negotiate, right? Negotiating the terms of a contract and all that stuff. That is most commonly used thing. But in law, we have a legislation called Negotiable Instruments Act. Okay, so this is a very important legislation. Let me open that. Negotiable Instruments Act. What is this legislation all about? Checks, you know, right?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
When a check is given, it's nothing but like a promise, right? That okay, if I'm giving you 20,000 rupees check, it's like okay, I have 20,000 rupees in my bank account. So if you deposit the check, you would get your amount. It's nothing but like a promise.
Okay.
But what if I have given you a check of 20,000 rupees and I don't have 20,000 rupees in my account? When you go to the bank, deposit the check, it would be dishonored. You would not get any
Yes,
money. Bank would return it, right? And it is
yes, ma'am.
considered as a crime. It is check bounce
Crime.
case. Okay, so
Yes, ma'am.
all those things are defined here in this legislation. It talks about punishment and everything. Now, like you said, negotiable means something which we can bargain, right? For this particular legislation, negotiable is having a different meaning. So there are different words being defined. Negotiation, negotiable, same only, right? So it is nothing but when it can be transferred. Negotiable means transferable, something which can be transferred. So if this word negotiation was not defined in this legislation, that otherwise it might mean something else. It might mean bargaining, whatever. But when you are reading this specific legislation, when you are getting this word negotiation, you should only understand this as the ability to transfer something. Right? When you are hearing negotiable instrument, it means something like a check. So it's very important.
Okay.
Otherwise, we would be thinking that, okay, negotiable means, you know, like bargain. And in that case, this entire legislation would mean no sense for us, right? We would not be able to understand it. So another important aid that we have is definition. Lot many words are being defined. Take, for example, when you are, and mostly, right, definition part you would see in the second section. Second section would be definition or interpretation clause, which would define some important words. Mostly this is common, but yeah, there are exceptions. Like in negotiable instruments, you saw there are different sections defining different things, right? Section 8 defines holder, section 9 define holder in due course. There might be exceptions. In case of Indian Penal Code also, definitions are given in different sections. That is an exception, but most common is that section 2 provides for definition. Like if you see Indian Contract Act, it defines proposal or an offer. It defines a promise, promisee, promisor. It defines consideration, all that. So definitions are very important because we know how we need to understand a certain word which is being used again and again in a certain legislation. Okay.
Okay.
Next one is illustration. Illustrations or examples, which are also very much important.
Okay.
Okay. Illustrations are also very much important. Take, for example, this is an illustration. Indian Penal Code, right? It defines various types of crimes. And crimes are sometimes very complicated, right? So it's very important that they give illustration. Take, for example, they are saying what is theft? Theft is nothing but taking movable property. Now, what is movable property? Usually, we would understand maybe a phone is a movable property, Might be a power bank is a movable property, might be a clip is a movable property. That's something that we can move. But what about trees? Trees are movable or immovable?
Trees, ma'am. Trees are movable property.
So trees are, what happens? Trees are again attached to the ground, right? So Indian Penal Code says that trees would be immovable until and unless it is attached to the ground. The moment I would separate it, right? I would separate it from the ground, it becomes a movable property. That means trees can also be subjected to theft, right? So it gives an example also. See, it explains first of all, a thing so long as it is attached to the earth, not being movable property. But when it is separated, it becomes movable property. After that, they make sure that, okay, fine, we are explaining what is theft. We are giving explanation. After that, they have given illustrations also just to avoid confusions. That A cuts a tree from the ground with the intention to taking it, then it becomes theft. That means illustrations are very important. In case you are reading something like this, Indian Penal Code and all, you would see a lot of illustrations over there. Okay. So illustrations are examples given in the statute for a better understanding of the section or what this is all about. What is proviso?
No, I'm not heard of it.
Okay. So proviso also is something that...
Is it like a precedent?
No, not precedent. Okay. Proviso is nothing but like an exception, you can say. Okay. So in law, what happens? They would explain a certain concept in a very detailed way nicely, that this is, if this happens, it is this. Once it is done, right, they would mention provided or proviso. That means exceptions are there. Normally this happens, but in certain cases, a different thing would be applicable. This is nothing but proviso. Okay, proviso provide examples of specific cases. In general, this is the rule, but there are some exceptions also. These specific examples are given to such cases where general words require special meaning for it. So proviso is also something that you commonly get to see in a legislation that explains like a different situation. There are some exceptions and stuff. Okay. Then next one is explanation. Explanation again we have seen in case of theft also, right? Explanation 1, explanation 2, explanation 3, 4, 5. So many explanations are given, right? They made sure that each and everything is explained properly because they have simply said that, okay, taking away movable property out of possession of a person is theft. It needs to be explained also what is taking away, what is movable. So for each and everything, explanations are also been given. This is nothing but to explain and elaborate on the meaning of certain words which are being used in a section. What are schedules? Have you seen schedules in the Constitution maybe?
Constitution, yes.
Right, so schedules are nothing but like extra information, additional information. Okay, even if you are reading the normal legislation with the sections and everything, that is also enough. You would understand it. But schedules are nothing but some additional information which has been mentioned in the legislation. Take for example, if I show you. Okay, let me show you first of all Indian Constitution of India. Okay, Constitution of India provides for a lot of different things. It talks about the states and the union territories, right? It says, okay, state is this, union territory is that. But if you have a doubt that, okay, how many states are there in India? How many union territories are there in India? What are their, like territorial area? What is the boundaries of that specific states or union territories? In that case, you can refer the schedule. That means without even knowing how many states are there, how many union territories are there, you would still be able to understand the concepts. But if you want to get some more details, you would get it in the schedule. Okay, same ways, you might be studying about president, governor, prime minister, judges and all that, right? And you want to know what was the salary or what are the privileges or benefits they were getting when Constitution came into force. Those are given in second schedule. If you want to know, okay, what is the oath and affirmation that they take while joining office, that is given in the third schedule. Like that, some additional information is given in schedule. Even if you do not study that, you would still be able to understand the concept well, but it's something that you can refer. Okay.
Okay.
Same ways, there is one legislation called Specific Relief Act. Okay, it talks about something called as infrastructure project. Now, what is infrastructure project? We can think about, okay, this might be an infrastructure project, that might be an infrastructure project, but still we might have some doubts, right? To clarify what infrastructure project means in this legislation, they have provided a schedule in the legislation where they have specified there are 5 categories of infrastructure project: transport, energy, water and sanitation, communication, social and commercial infrastructure. These are 5 classifications. Within that, again, we have subcategories like electricity generation, transmission, distribution, and all that, water, solid waste management, and all that, communication, telecommunication, like that they have specified. Right? So this is nothing but some additional information. If you had not read the schedule, you might have some confusion that, okay, is it included as an infrastructure project or not? But once you read the schedule, you get like a clear idea of it. Right? So this is also nothing but something law takes help of in understanding or deriving meaning. Then punctuation, definitely it makes meaning out of a sentence, right? Where some comma is being used and full stop and all that, that again makes meaning out of a certain sentence that helps us understand or derive meaning out of a statement also, right? So this is also nothing but part of internal. So knowledge on different parts of the statute is very much important, because only when you know what is the purpose of all these different things that are there within a statute, you are able to study the legislation well, you are able to derive meaning. So it's very much important because it makes this entire process of understanding a legislation very easy and convenient for us. Okay.
Okay.